Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chatting with the Rev. I'm Reverend G.W. Scott, and I'm glad to be here one more time with you today. You know, as I was thinking about, we're in the Christmas season and we're anticipating seeing wonderful, beautiful things in the festivities of the day. I couldn't help but think about how this society has really somewhat done its people a disservice in a world that places so much emphasis on beauty and all of these exterior things. Beauty and the figure and how beautiful you are in the face and what you look like and all of this models that are the examples or a prototype of the way all of us should be striving to become, and how we emphasize the physical, the outward shell, if you will, what it appears to be. Good afternoon, my wife Teresa, Lady T. What it appears to be. So much so that those who don't fit that image begin to have self-esteem issues. We want to tuck this and pull that and yank this and turn this around and make our bodies do what it cannot do and be what it cannot be just to fit the image that society says is the perfect image. We have people, with women in particular, that are beautiful just as they are. But because they don't fit the mold of what society defines beauty as being, they then become self-conscious. Even the slightest flaw is magnified. Considering themselves ugly and considering themselves not beautiful enough. Trying to get what they see in the newspapers and on the magazines and on the television and in the movies. Trying to get that. And many times the people that you see on television, in the movies, and the like, it's all put on. They spend hours in the makeup room. Even cameras can camouflage certain flaws. Brush painting can hide so many flaws. When we see them, they look like they just come right off of the runway. They look like they go to bed all neat and clean and beautiful, with makeup perfectly placed on their faces and their hair perfectly done. And they wake up, they still are just as beautiful as when they went to bed. I've seen pictures and movies where they've run all day and not a hair out of place. They fall down, pushed in the water. And they get out and they look just as good as they did before. This is all fantasy world. This is all make-believe. But we've been so indoctrinated with it for so long that we begin to internalize it ourselves. And when we look in the mirror and see who we are as compared to who they are, we believe that we've come up short. And if everyone that falls into that category, people with disabilities are the most impacted by it. Not only do they not look like what society says a perfect person should look like, but they don't even walk like, and they don't even move like, and they maybe have intellectual challenges, so they don't even think like what society says you should look, walk, and think. I'm so glad that beauty is in the eye of the beholder with a capital B, and that the Lord looks beyond your outward appearance and looks at your heart. Because I know some of the most beautiful women and the most handsome of men who have an ugly heart, cold heart. Nothing beautiful about that heart. But this body, no matter how perfect it is when you're in your teens, in your 20s, in your 30s, or even in your 40s, by and by, sooner or later, it begins to grow old and decay. And the way you used to look and the things you used to be able to do are nothing more than a picture in a frame. Good afternoon to my cousin Beth. Beauty is not what you see. Beauty is who you are. But because of the stigma that society has laid upon us, we always believe and we feel as though we've come up short, a little too heavy. Hair not quite the way it should be, all smooth and straight. If you have a disability, certainly that's just the opposite of what society says a person should be like. But it impacts everybody. Unless you have that hourglass figure, unless you have that beautiful, perfect face, you begin to question your own self-esteem. You begin to question your own value and your own worth. It gets deep. Little girls, when I came along, there were no black little baby dolls. There were always white little baby dolls. They were all, none of them had any imperfections. Beautiful eyes, beautiful hair. Everything was perfect about them. They did not project any of the images that I grew up with. They did not project any of the looks that I grew up with, the people that loved me and who I loved. They didn't project any of that. They did not show any of that. I did not see in them anyone that I knew, including myself. There was no lame Ken, no blind Barbie, no one that I could relate to. And I can understand why many women who are just beautiful women begin to question their own beauty, even their own worth, because of what society says you should look like. Oh, how many times we say, I don't care what people think of me, but we do care. If we didn't care, then we wouldn't do what we do. We'd be satisfied with our bodies. We'd be satisfied with our looks. We'd be satisfied the way we walk, or whether we can walk at all. We'd be satisfied about ourselves if we truly did not care what others thought about us. Certainly the opinion of others is important. But to allow that to dictate, allow that to shape and form and lead you to a place where you don't even appreciate who you are as an individual, something's wrong with that. Something's wrong with that. As one person who has been laughed at and mocked at my whole life because of my disability, because of the way I walk, because of the way I hold my right hand, which has cerebral palsy in it. Yes, I was teased. Yes, I was mocked. Yes, I was jeered at. Yes, I was laughed at. Yes, I was ostracized. Yes, I had to play by myself a lot of times. Good afternoon, Elder Felicia. Yes, there were a lot of times that I was all by myself because nobody wanted to be around me. I made them uncomfortable. I slowed them down. It wasn't the same playing with him. Being around him was awkward. Therefore, I was many times shunned. And you don't have to have a physical disability to be shunned. I remember when I was growing up, if you had dark skin, the light-skinned folk would shun you. I'm talking about we were in school, we had a club, And then they reversed it. Good afternoon, Sister Ingrid. We had a club when I was in high school in the 60s, and we had a club, and they reversed it, and you could only be dark skinned in order to join the club. So naturally, me and some of my friends and others were not welcome into the club. It got to the point that there was one girl who was dark skinned, but she always wore Shirley Temple curls. And because she wore her hair in a Shirley Temple curl, they ostracized her too. See how ridiculous it can be? I know my family, way back in the country, in Maryland, and all the pastors were light-skinned. Most of the members were light-skinned. And you couldn't be a dark-skinned person and be a pastor in that church. And this is a African Methodist Episcopal church. They left the white Methodist church because of prejudice, because of bigotry, because of bias. And here they are themselves, setting a standard, a racial standard, if you will, a hue standard, a complexion standard amongst themselves. Because, once again, there's an image that must be projected. There's an image that must be protected. There's an image that must be supported. There's an image that must be strived for. I know there was a young woman who I knew. My wife and I both knew. And yes, she was not a light person in terms of weight, but I thought she was beautiful. I didn't see any imperfections in her, really. But she had this in her mind that she wanted to be thinner. She wanted to be thinner. So she went through surgery. You know, the nip and tuck and taking out part of the stomach and all of that? And after the surgery, she suffered so long and so hard, almost unto death. Always going back in for corrective surgery, for additional surgery, to get this right and to get that right, over and over again. Just to look like one of them models, those models in a book, in a magazine, on a runway, in the movies. If only we knew how much it cost them to look that good, we would stop our foolishness. Robbing Peter to pay Paul in order to get the money to do that, and then you get sick as a dog. It wasn't worth it. I know a couple of people that had trouble with that surgery. I'm not saying if it's necessary, you shouldn't do it. It's there. If your health's in jeopardy, if you've gotten to be so obese that it actually jeopardizes your health, diabetes, a heart condition, and you're going to die unless you do something about it, then of course it's there for you. But I'm talking about people that really don't need it. Not really. English said they may be beautiful, yes, but are they happy? And that's a good point too. I know one woman that's a beautiful woman, beautiful by any standard that you could set. And yet she can't stay married. She can't stay happy in a relationship with another human being to save her life. Even I said, my goodness, if I was married to her, boy, I mean, But you don't know the demons that are in people's hearts. You don't know the struggles that they have. You don't know. You're looking at the outward appearance. But our lives are so much more than what you see on the outside. And I want to say that to those who have physical, developmental, and mental challenges. Your life is more than what you see on the outside or what others see of you on the outside. Your life is much more than that. It's worth much more than that. God had a purpose with you in mind, and it had nothing to do with cosmetics. They said Paul was an epileptic. Paul had a big nose. Paul was really not a good-looking man to look at by any standard of the word. Yet what most of what we believe in the Christian faith have come from the writings of Paul. You hear people talking about all kinds of things Paul says. Finish the course. Fought the fight. Pray without ceasing. Oh, so many quotes of his. The wonderful, beautiful quote of the love chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. All written by Paul. The verse dealing in Romans, dealing with how you're saved. Paul's writings. He wrote most of the New Testament. This hunchback, large nose, epileptic man. It wasn't what it was when he looked on the outside that mattered. It's what he had on the inside that counted. Many people with disabilities and many people in life struggle with self-esteem. Have you ever suffered with self-esteem? Didn't talk like everybody talked. Didn't act like everybody acted. Good afternoon, Mark. Couldn't walk like everybody else walked. Weren't the size of everybody else. You're either too thin or you're too large. I know people that are skinny. Good afternoon, Deidre. But when they look in the mirror, they look at every ounce of flesh on them and consider themselves fat. Then they become anorexic or suffer with bulimia. Because they cannot see themselves for who they are. We're not what we see in the mirror. We're more than what's in the mirror. And only when we begin to realize who we are, for real, can we really become contented with who we are, accept who we are, and be who we are. That's why there's so much ostracization of people with being ostracized, people being ignored, people being denied who have physical disabilities, because there's something about how they walk, what they do, how they project themselves on the outside that makes able-bodied folk awkward. That's not how it should be, they say. Look how he walks. You ain't supposed to walk like that. Who said you're not supposed to walk like that? Look at her. She can hardly see. Oh, she can't see at all. Oh, she's blind. It's no good to be blind. What's her life going to be blind? What's she going to accomplish being a blind girl? Being a blind guy? Well, ask Ray Charles. Ask Stevie Wonder. Ask Fanny Crosby. Ask Helen Keller. What can you do with your being blind? Now look how he walks. He walks so funny. He can't even walk at all. Man, he ain't going to be amount to nothing. If that's the case, ask Franklin Roosevelt. Ask Stephen Hawking. It's not what you are on the outside that counts. It's what you have on the inside. I've been disabled all my life. Now I'm in a wheelchair for nearly 10 years. But none of that counts. I know who I am on the inside. Sometimes society doesn't accept you on the your inside because they don't take time to know who you are on the inside. All they see is what's obvious, what's on the outside, and they never get to know who you are. And that's their problem. That's their problem, not yours. You could have taught them something. You could have shown them something. You could have enlightened them to something. You may have helped them out of the muck and mire that they're in. But because they see you with a CNI dog, they see you signing, they see you in a wheelchair, they see you limping, they see you whatever the case may be, they see your imperfection, and so they say, oh no, she can't help me. What can she tell me? She got enough struggle of her own. What can he tell me? He has enough struggle of his own. He can't tell me nothing. Oh, blind gnat. We can learn from anybody. We can learn from that person who can't get out the bed, who can't even talk. But every time you see him, he or she is smiling. That's right. I learned a lot from a little girl when I pastored in Georgetown, Delaware. I learned a lot from her. Her name was Eunice. Eunice, they actually called her. And Eunice had Down syndrome. She wasn't expected to live long, and she didn't. But I used to tell my members every Sunday, bring your Bible to church. Don't forget to bring your Bibles. Now, these were to be people who have intellectual abilities, and some were teachers, and some were, I even had judges and other people as members of the church. And they would forget it. Oh, I'm sorry, Rev, but we would read together from the Bible, whether it be Bible study or whether it be the church service. When I'm doing my sermon, sometimes I say, open up your Bibles and read this or that. And they'd have to share Bibles because most of them didn't even bring their Bible. But this one little girl, Eunice, couldn't even read the Bible, really. But every Sunday, every Wednesday when we had Bible study, she'd bring that little Bible. I remember it used to be a little white Bible. She would bring that Bible every time those doors of the church opened. And when I would read from the Bible, she'd open up her Bible, and I know some of the verses. I'm sure she didn't know how to read. But she knew a few of those verses, though. Yes, she did. She knew a few of them. I think she could say part of the Lord is my shepherd. I think she knew that. She knew the Lord's Prayer. But her obedience was better than sacrifice. Her obedience. Pastor said, bring your Bible. She brought her Bible all the time. Sometimes her sister, who did not have Down syndrome, her mother, who did not have Down syndrome, you just had to borrow her Bible to read. She'd be in church every Sunday. Sometimes I'd have to pick that family up. They lived on the outskirts of the town. And I'd pick them up, and she'd be the first one ready. She'd be waiting for me at the door. I had to wait for the mother and the other sister. And I think she had a brother. I had to wait for them. She was ready. About 3 or 4 years later, she did pass. But I remember her so well. I remember her because of what she wasn't from the world standards. Hello, Arthur. But I remember her because of who she was. Not because of what the world said she wasn't. I remember Eunice because of who she was. I remember some of my students always said, Rev, we don't look at you and your disability. We don't look at you limping. We just know you, and we love you. Because they got to know me. Anything that Rev could do for them, Rev would do for them. I taught them. I stayed up all night long getting lessons for them. when I taught there at Hope Church School. Arthur Burgess, who's on the line right now, or he's on the screen here. He remembers when I taught him. Hey, Arthur, he's saying, hey, Rev. All they could do for me when I needed help, Arthur was one of the ones, he would be sitting up there helping me get across the street. When there was ice and snow, so many of them did that. I needed something from the store and I couldn't go. They would go to the store for me. Here you are, Rev. They looked beyond the obvious and saw something more than the obvious. Everybody could see I had trouble going up the stairs. Everybody could see that I had trouble walking. Everybody could see that. That's what they saw. But they got to know the real Rev, the real Gerald, the real Mr. Scott. We have to give people a chance to show who they are. Don't automatically preconceive through your own understanding, which you have to admit is faulty at times. Let them see who you really are. And you who are looking at people who have challenges, take time to know who they really are. Get to talking to them. I had a friend when I could go to Hope Church, the church itself, and he would come every Sunday looking for me. I think he had paranoia or some mental disorder. And people would always joke with me. They said, Rev, here's your friend. He'd always search me out. Now, at the beginning, you know how it started? It started with me giving him a few cents. Can you give me a quarter, mister? Can you give me a dime? Can you give me something so I can get something to eat? That's how it started. But I didn't judge him. I didn't, oh man, what are you talking about? Get away from me. You're unkempt. You're not clean. I know there's something wrong with you. No. My wife would tell you I took time with him, didn't I? And as time went on, it wasn't about the money anymore. He just wanted to see me. He would talk to me because I would talk to him. He would tell me about his life as another young man who used to come to the house here. We used to have Bible study here. In fact, he and his friends, all of them, had some kind of mental challenge in their lives. We'd have Bible studies. Those guys knew a lot about the Bible. One in particular, he knew it back and forth and back. If you looked at him and you heard what he talking to themselves, you would dismiss them as saying, oh no, they don't know anything about no Bible. Listen to him talking to himself. But I gave them the opportunity. And when they wanted to speak, I let them speak. And I learned. They taught me. First thing they taught me was, don't judge a book by its cover. That's the first thing. Everyone who, like myself, has had a physical or developmental or mental challenge, the first thing they teach me or remind me of, because I already know myself because of me, but I am taught still, that you don't judge a book by its cover. Eunice taught me about faithfulness. Eunice taught me about obedience. My friend that used to come every week, he taught me about the commitment that he had and the love that he had for the word. Did he always live by it? Of course, and neither do I. He didn't live by it, neither do I all the time. I've fallen short of the glory of God. Paul wrote that too. And there was the apostle. He said, I've fallen short. I've come short of the glory of God. He said, I'm striving to attain it. This perfection. I'm striving. I haven't attained it yet. But I'm pressing to the mark of the high calling which is in Christ Jesus. This is Paul. He said, when I would do good, I choose evil instead. Paul. Don't get so sanctimonious about who you think you are and deceive yourself into believing the hype. There's been an old saying, to thy own self be true. Don't lie to you. You know you better than anybody else knows you. You don't want to admit it sometimes, but you know yourself. Give people around you an opportunity to show you the gifts and the talents, the abilities that they do have. Whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you're in a hospital bed, whether you're limp, whether you're blind, whether you're deaf, whether you're short of stature, whether you're a giant. Whether you have diabetes or cancer or HIV or full-blown AIDS, whether you have cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, lupus, muscular dystrophy, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease. It doesn't matter what you have. The word says we're all made in his image. We're perfect in every way. Is no mistake, are no mistakes, no blemish, not in God's sight, though in man's sight there are. We know that. We know that. Man thinks that they look at the blemish, they look at the shortcomings, they want to harp on what you're not. And then ironically get mad when you point out their errors, when you point out their flaws. They're ready to fight, they're ready to duke it out with you, they're ready to ignore you, they're ready to walk away mad, angry, peeved. Nobody's perfect, everybody has a fault. And everybody's challenged by something. If you want to be honest about it, everybody's disabled to a certain extent. There's some things you can't do. There's some things some people can do better than you can. I'm going to tell you the truth. There's some things people who have challenged abilities, disabilities, if you will, can do that you can't do. I've had people come to me and say to me after I preach a sermon, man, I could never do that. First of all, I couldn't stand up there amongst the crowd. Then I couldn't even get my thoughts together like you do and speak without having to read from it. No, I couldn't do that off the top of my head like you do. I couldn't do that. I said, well, thanks be to God. He gave me something. He gave me an ability. Everybody looked at the disability, but they forget to look at the ability. There are 60 million people with disabilities here in this country and 1 billion around the world. Yet we are the most isolated and ostracized group of any other. Isn't that ironic? Because we are disabled, the disabled do not project an image of physical and intellectual perfection. The delusion and unrealistic standard perpetuated by the able-bodied. We're often rejected, scorned, mocked, jeered. I'm going to ask you, those who are able-bodied, have you ever felt not worth it? Have you ever has your self-esteem ever been beaten to the point where you didn't think that you were worth anything? I know I've met people that are able-bodied, women, particularly women, who have been so abused psychologically, emotionally, so abused physically. My wife Teresa said, yes, I know her story. That your whole worth is in question in your own mind. You don't believe that you don't have the right to be happy. You don't believe you have the right to be successful. You don't believe you have the ability to be successful. You don't believe that you have the ability to be happy. Because you've been called good for nothing, amount to nothing so often and so long that you begin to believe that for yourself. You don't have a disability at all. This is how people have treated you. On a personal note, my wife was a foster child. Went from one place to another. Because she was going from one place to another and never was the real child per se, she was always treated differently. If the real daughter got something good, she got the leftover. Or what the other daughter used to have. Or something quite not as good as the other daughter, who was the natural child. Or someone within that household would take advantage of her sexually and emotionally, cuss her out, do things to her that should not be done to a child. And all of this begins to build on your self-esteem, or the lack of the same. You believe that you're not worth being respected because nobody respects you. You don't believe that you are born to achieve great things because everybody said you ain't going to amount to nothing. And you don't have to have cerebral palsy to have those situations happen in your life. Many able-bodied people I know have been through the mill and back. They too have self-esteem issues, in terms of taking their lives. Most disabled people don't take their life. It's able-bodied people that take their lives more than disabled people do. They just can't take it. The bullying, the being made fun of, the ridicule, and all the rest. They can't take it. So can you imagine that plus a disability? That plus the challenges that you have every day because you are different in the sense of you aren't able to do what others can do like they can do it. And that works on you. You got to sit in your window looking outside on a bad day where everybody else is playing in the snow because you can't get out in the snow. And if you do, somebody has to help you. And then somebody has to stand there with you and have to help you go back in and, on and on and on. I love it that I have a power wheelchair. Because sometimes I just want to get out. Sometimes I just want to do and not have somebody push me and take me where they want me to go. And when I got to leave, when they got to leave, I got to leave. And, sometimes they don't even want to push because they can't push or whatever. And then that gets me nervous because I don't know whether they're going to fall out or what. I like to be able to have a little independence. It's good for the soul. Particularly for a male. We're raised to be the ones who are the leaders and get out and do, and of course I'm limited now. My age and my health limits me, but when I get the opportunity to go out, I want to do it. And I know my wife in particular, she's nervous because, sometimes my mind will float a little bit, and when I get confused, I get what you call a panic attack, which is part of cerebral palsy. You get that nervous, you don't know where you are, and then it's magnified because now you just, become almost stifled. I do have a mind to at least ask, but even there, if it doesn't work right, then I get even more nervous or whatever. So I have those little panic attacks from time to time, but I have to risk it because the option is stay home all the time or wait till somebody goes with me. And that works on your psyche. It does. It works on your psyche. Because you know you're not the same. But you don't want to admit it. I know I don't want to admit it. So I try. So then I get in trouble because I forget something or I lose something. I lose my way. I lose things that I've carried. I mean, But what am I going to do? I'm going to keep on doing till I can't do no more. My days are not as long as they have been. I'm 65. I've lived longer than I'm going to live, first of all. Just life itself. Regardless of the disability, I've lived longer than I'm going to live. And there'll be a day that I'll be even less able. mentally as well as physically, to do what I used to do and what I'm doing now. So like the Bible tells us, while it's still day, work while it's still day, for the night will come when no man can work. No man can do. I like going to the store. When I get out there, I breathe a breath of fresh air every time I walk, every time I move down the road. I just breathe in and I feel good. It revitalizes me. That air going into my lungs, but I have asthma as well. I have sleep apnea as well. So breathe in that air real hard. I do that every time I go out. Makes me feel good. The world has always looked at people with disabilities with a questioning eye. Even the religious and social systems of our day and even of antiquity has always had a, like a confrontational view. Certainly not a sympathetic or realistic view. For example, Judeo-Christian religion, we talked about it before. Sin is associated with being disabled. Your faith is associated with being disabled. If you are a Christian and you aren't miraculously healed, there's something about your faith. You lack the degree of faith that you need to be healed. The Judeo-Christian tradition has it that being disabled is really a mistake that needs to be fixed. Whether it's through medicine or through miracles, it needs to be fixed. Hinduism calls it bad karma. That you need 8 reincarnations to get it right. 8 reincarnations to get it right. My goodness, have mercy. In Islam, a disabled person is either an object of pity or an object of disgrace. It's an object of pity or an object of disgrace. Buddhism says that you should deny and ignore your disability and pray that in your next incarnation, that means becoming flesh again, you'll lose your disability. Because this is not how it's supposed to be. So just deny it. And hope that your next reincarnation will have you in a better situation. Communism says that if you're disabled, there's no use for you. Secular humanism, which most of our founding fathers were, secular humanists, believe that you should be pitied, but there's no reason to invest in you. You're not worth investing in. It's a waste of money. Fascism, so people with disabilities have no place in society. What do you think of people with disabilities? How many friends do you have with disabilities? I don't mean people you know. I mean how many friends that you have who are disabled. And even the people that you know, how often do you communicate with them? How often do you interact with them? How often do you say that you really spend time with them? How many people in the church that you belong to, the synagogue that you belong to, the mosque that you belong to, the temple that you belong to, the organization, society, or club that you belong to have a disability? And how are they treated in the club, church, synagogue, mosque, temple, lodge? How are they treated, if you have any at all? Are they treated like people that you should pity? Are you awkward around them? You don't know how to approach them. You talk through to them through somebody else. Let's be realistic. How do we deal with it? How do you deal with people in your family who have a disability, who have a challenge of ability? How do you interact with them? You ever take them anywhere? Do you ever go out with them? You may visit them, but but what is the real relationship with them and you? It's a sad situation, really. It's a very sad situation. I have very close family members of mine who get together. I don't know nothing about it. With other family members, I'm now. Keep in mind, that's my family too. I don't know nothing about it until after the fact. Then somebody accidentally tells me. I didn't know nothing about this because no one, what are we gonna do with you, girl? Now keep in mind, this is ever. Now keep in mind, I just told you, I just been in the wheelchair since 2008. I'm 65 years old. And there are functions that I've never gone to because no one's ever told me. Now keep in mind, if I wasn't in a wheelchair, what I'd do? I had to walk, right? So I was able to walk. A little differently. Yeah, you have to take a little accommodation. I can't sit in the back. I can't because my leg is the way it is and all that. But, if you really want to do what you do, you find a way. If you really want to. I'm not alone. My wife's niece, she's passed a few years ago now. And for the most part, she'd been in the house by herself. And she was in a wheelchair too. She'd be by herself all the time. No one really would, She'd watch her little wrestling, watch her little shows, do something on the computer every now and then, do her homework when she was in school. Of course, she ended up in her 20s when she passed, so she was out of school for a good little time. But for the most part, she was by herself. Oh, she had family, plenty of family. Oh, yeah, she had a lot of family. But nobody. $60 million strong. Yet everybody's over here and over there, all by themselves a lot of times. When are we going to really start treating each other like we should treat each other? With respect, with concern, with compassion. With an earnest feeling of love and respect. But that's all I got to say today. I do want to close with two things. I want to remind you that on Fridays, we have another program here at 3 o'clock. And my wife has a program as well. And we ask you to go to her page, Teresa Jeanette Scott, to find out the time, the dates. It's always a Friday at 7, but you can find out who's going to be the guest, where to go to get to the program. She also has a call-in program and all of that. So go to her page on Facebook, Teresa Jeanette Scott, and all of that information will be available to you. It's even available on my page about her programming. My page is Gerald Joshua K.S. Scott as well. So we'll see you on Friday at 3 o'clock. Before I leave, I want to remind remind you that the Lord has inspired me, has led me, has given me an unction to do something special this year at the week of Christmas week. That'll be the week of the 21st. Christmas on a Sunday, that the week preceding the Sunday. We're going to go out into the center city of Philadelphia, and we're going to give out. We haven't decided how we're going to do it yet. But we're going to show some love to people who need to be shown love the most. Those that are homeless, those that are disabled, those that are disenfranchised in one way or another. Mothers with children, as single mothers, whatever the case may be. We're going to go out there to do the best we can. I know for myself, if it's no more than taking a couple little things, I'm going to go out on the week of the 21st. I have to decide what day in particular, because I have to always take that into consideration, in particular during the wintertime where snow and ice and other things. But one of the days that'll be a better of the days, I'm going out. I've already gotten a few people that have pledged themselves. I'm sure Teresa will be going with me. And I got a few others who have pledged. My sister, Rhonda, she already has pledged to be with me. Deidre has pledged. My sister-in-law, Shirley, has pledged. We'll get a few other people. My sister wants to deal with some other things that will make this even a better situation than what we do. My nephew, Amir, has said that he wanted to be a part of it. So we, hopefully, even if it's more than 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people working together. If you're interested, just go into my Facebook page, send me a comment or in my message box, and let me know what you want to do, what you want to participate, and what you want to do to participate. And we're going to meet here on next week, well, actually this week, sometime this week or the early part of next week, very early part, and formulate, and have to do a phone conference, whatever. But we are going to do something, just like I said, the Lord gave it to me, so I got to be first partaker. If nobody else does, I'm going to do something, because the Lord laid it upon my heart to do. And I think it's only right to do it. At this time where the Christ child was born, he was born to save the lost. He was born to feed the hungry. He was born to teach the disenfranchised that life is worth living. He was born for that. For God so loved the world that he gave. Who did he give? His only begotten Son, Yeshua HaMashiach, who the world knows as Jesus the Christ. That's what he gave us out of love. And so we want to show a little bit of that love. In the streets of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, we want to show this city. If there's no more than 4 people, 3 people, whatever, we want to show somebody on that week that we care. And like I said before, we're going to follow up. Whoever we choose, we're going to take 2 or 3 of those persons that we touch. And we're going to follow up and make almost like adopt them in a sense. We're going to work with them. We're going to call them. We're going to see them. And we're going to do for them as best we can, Lord being our helper. So until Friday, have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. Be blessed. And know that God is in control of all of the rest. See you soon. Bye.